Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. My name's Max and I recently finished my second sketchbook. If you've not seen it, I will leave the link to the tour in the iCards. Today we're going to be decorating the cover of my current sketchbook, which is my third sketchbook. On my last two sketchbooks I decorated the covers with stickers, but this time I want to use paint instead because I've got more freedom of customization. Hope you enjoy the video. I wanted my sketchbook cover to reflect the things that were likely to be inside it, so I looked through my old sketchbook and I wrote down anything that I saw maybe more than 3 times. These were each going to represent an element of my cover. In the end, I came up with fantasy, my OCs, neographics, boys, Billie Eilish and Melanie Martinez, monsters, desserts, eyes, cats, contrast, space, patterns, weird animals, Lord of the Rings, Stranger Things, and buildings. Now I knew what I wanted to include in my cover, it was time to incorporate it into a plan. I opened up my sketchbook and started drawing boxes, rectangles, and circles arranged on the page, each one representing a different subject. I rearranged them a few times before I was happy, and then I labelled each box with what I wanted it to represent. There were 16 boxes in total, 8 on each page, or eventually on each cover. During this process, I started to come up with ideas of what exactly I was going to put in each of the boxes, as in what specific thing I was going to paint. Here is the finished plan. It's time to transfer that onto the covers of the book. So as you can see, I've marked out the different sections with masking tape and I've given them all a white base coat so that the black doesn't show through on the final layer. Right now I'm just painting the background colours of all the different boxes. I want it to have a sort of spacey vibe, so I used lots of purpley pinky colours. As you can see, the circular boxes have been turned into actual paintings that don't have a background. For example, the planet in the corner and the eye on the second cover. This was to vary the composition a little bit more and make it a little more interesting to look at. I used 3 background colours in total, each page got 2 of each colour. While I was on this step, I also started painting on the circle boxes or the paintings that don't have frames. I gave the pupil on the eye and I painted the planet a little bit. I also used some gold for the ring of power and also that same colour over on the rings of the planet. I used a darker colour for the shading and I also went back over the whites of the eyes. And I added a pupil with black. Then I made a star on the little circle in the corner. This was representing the neographics. After shading a little on the eye, I went and did the writing on the ring of power. Throughout the process, I did a lot of going backwards and forwards between things because certain things weren't dry and I wanted to do it as quickly as possible. Here I'm finishing off the neurographics circle. Then I made a start on my first rectangular box. That little white splodge there is where I accidentally peeled away some of the paint with my nail, but it's alright because it's going to be covered by the picture anyway. This box was themed after Billie Eilish and Melanie Martinez because I draw those two together quite a lot because I feel like their looks sort of conflict a bit and they look quite cool next to each other. While you watch this, you've got to bear in mind that my painting skills are suboptimal, especially when it comes to painting people, so I don't really know what I'm doing, but I gave it my best shot. I think it turned out alright. It doesn't look like either of them particularly, but I think I can cope with that. Especially Billy. Billy ended up looking a bit like Eddie Monson, to be honest, but that's okay, because he's cool too. I was originally planning on making Melanie's hair half black, half white, but then she'd look too much like Sia because they have quite similar hair, and because my painting skills are so poor, you wouldn't be able to tell who it was. As you can see, Billy's not looking so good over there, so I gave her some yellow-green hair like she had a while ago, just because then it's more iconically her, because lots of people just have normal black hair, but if I can only use hair to make someone look like who they really are, then I should really use one that is more iconic. Then I moved on to the next square along. This was my Stranger Things themed square, and I couldn't think of something that I could paint that symbolises all of Stranger Things that would be easy to paint and could fit in that box, so I decided to draw the Leaving Hawkins, Come Again Soon sign. I feel like if I tried to paint a Demogorgon or one of the characters, it would have gone horribly wrong and you wouldn't be able to tell it was Stranger Things at all, so I feel like having the word Hawkins very clearly written on it should be enough of a hint. I did struggle a bit with spacing the letters out properly on this one. As you saw, I did have to do the leaving bit again because it was too far over to the right, but in the end it was all alright. I gave it a bit of a shadow around the edge in a lighter grey, and I moved on to the next one. The next rectangle is themed after desserts, and as you can see, it's a tall layer cake. I'll have to admit, I'm not a big fan of eating cake. It gets really crumbly in my mouth, not sure why, probably doesn't do that for everyone, and then it goes down my throat and I choke, so I'm not a big one for cake, but I'll eat cake anyway if it's someone's birthday, because that's the sort of person I am. I painted the sponges a cream colour, and then I gave them blue icing on the top on each layer, dripping down over the cake. Then I got a darker shade of blue and I did a sort of shadow. I painted the top bit of each cake so that you could see there was a definition between the drips and the top of the cake. You may notice me repainting the background on some of these. This is so that it sort of covers up any pencil lines that are left over, and also there was still a little bit of black showing through, so I needed to get rid of that. This next rectangle probably took the longest out of all of them. It's themed after my OCs, and it took a long time because painting people takes a lot longer than painting signs or cake, and there's 4 of them here, and I also had to draw them all out, and because there's more colours involved, I had to mix all the colours, so it did take a lot longer than the other ones. As I did with the Billie Eilish and Melanie Martinez one, I filled in their skin with a cream base colour to begin with. They always look really freaky at this bit because you paint over their nose and they look like they're wearing sort of half masks. Then I got a darker, more browny colour and I did all the shading on their faces, starting with just blocking it out around the eyes and the neck and the nose, and then blending it out with the creamy colour. Next, I blocked out their eyes and their smiles with white paint. Of course, Jaden doesn't have a smile because he doesn't really smile, that's just sort of his personality. Then I started filling in the hair, and as you can see I struggled to make a blonde hair colour, so it's just sort of yellow with a bit of brown mixed in. And also I struggled with Ace's ginger hair. He looks more like strawberry colour. Not strawberry blonde, just actual strawberry. Jaden's hair was nice and easy though, because it's just black, it doesn't need any shading. I painted all their outfits and I detailed all their eyes, and again filling in the background because Jake really messed up with his wrong face that I had to rub out, and it smudged absolutely everywhere. Then I moved on to the square just underneath it, which is themed after cats. This one, I didn't draw my cat because he's predominantly black and the background is black as well, and because the borders are already quite thick, I didn't want to make black any more prominent in the painting. So I just painted this cute little white kitty with green eyes, and I quite like him. I think he's quite cool. Then up to the top, there's a little bit more backwards and forwards. For the buildings box, I painted a silhouette of a city to start with, and then I went back later and added details. I also went over the sky again to add a bit more contrast, and then for the fantasy box next to it I drew a really long sword because not much else would have been able to fit in such a skinny box. I added all the details and then I went over the background like I did before. Now that it was dry, I could go back to the buildings box and add little windows to all of the buildings on there to make it look a little bit less plain. And then I moved on to the final box of that cover, which was my weird animals box. And I drew a sort of giraffe zebra. It's just a zebra with a really long neck that behaves like a giraffe. I painted it craning its neck up towards a branch of leaves for its nice dinner. I gave him a little pink tongue, a nose, and also some horns for some reason, and then I painted all the stripes on him and on his mane. I detailed all the leaves, and then I went over the background like I had done previously. Turning our attention back to the back cover, there's a little bit more jumping around. I did all of the sketches first. Here I'm doing the boys sketch, and over here I'm doing the contrast sketch, and now this is the monster sketch. It is of course a Wendigo. Then I started on the patterns box. This is overall my least favourite box. I was trying to keep it simple because I was running out of time a bit, so I just got my Posca pen out and did loads of circles, and then got a different colour and added little dots everywhere. I feel like it just got a little bit too busy and it wasn't well thought out enough. There wasn't really a cool thing about the pattern, it was just like loads of dots and crosses. I also feel like it didn't really fit the vibe of all the other boxes. Next I started working on the rose one. I don't particularly like that one either, just because it turned out a little bit simple and I don't think it represented the theme very well. The theme was contrast, and I tried to make it like a really depressing looking rose, because roses are normally happy things, but it just looked a bit simple. With the Wendigo, that one was also quite simple, but I do quite like that one. I detailed his fur a bit with the grey, and I also gave him a grey skull and his antlers, and then his eyes were red. For the boys box, this isn't a particular boy, this isn't like a specific character, I just made him up on the spot. I gave him a cream base coat and then a light shading around his face. I blocked out his eyes and smile, and then his hair. I tried to make his hair as flicky outy as possible so that it looked like hair, because, you know, the silhouette of it was all the definition that it had really. I finished off his eyes, I gave him his shirt, and at last the cover is painted. This took me a very long time and I'm quite pleased with how it turned out. I do feel like the borders between them were quite thick, but it's alright, it turned out fine in the end. I hope you enjoyed the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe if you did, and I'll see you in the next one.